I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, January the 18th, and talk about a tale of two Wednesdays. If you remember a week ago, on Wednesdays when the feeder cattle market in the sale barns, your cash feeders just tanked big time. Nobody really saw it coming. We knew we had some weakness out there. We knew our feedlots were full. We knew that the temperatures were bitter cold and it had been dry, and a lot of our winter grazing had kind of played out, and things were up against us, but we never dreamed it would be that much sharply lower. Then it finished out the rest of last week lower, and then it started out this week with a lot of your markets lower again, trying to catch up with what was seen the middle of last week. But then all of a sudden there was some spots that had some firmness on Tuesday, but then here on Wednesday it just sharply higher. Almost all of it back. Didn't get everything back that we lost last Wednesday, but most of it in most cases. And it looks like now we've got a little bit of momentum, and this thing could get pretty good, and even on your fat cattle trade. And the board's been good so far this week. Closed on Monday, but been up both Tuesday and Wednesday pretty significantly, especially on Wednesday there. If you look at the board, April live cattle for Wednesday was up $2.40 to end the day at $122.77. February spot live cattle up $2.87. That's nearly the limit, guys, and ended at $120.97. Hey, we could still keep a little bit of basis here and have a steady fat cattle market, or maybe even gain a buck or two, who knows. March feeder cattle up $2.05 on Wednesday to end the day at $145.97, and corn was up over 4 cents. So, and corn doesn't do anything this time of year, but that's the biggest move it's had in a long time, and up over 4 cents. So feeder cattle not seeing any budge from that. But January feeder cattle up $2.27 to end the day at $147.57, and that is going off and leaving your cash feeders in the dust, because you just can't hardly turn. You can turn the market around and you can stop it from going down and going back up, but it's hard to get a big index level in a huge area like the 12-state region to turn that fast, and especially when it's a 7-day moving average, which is what your CME index is and your real-time index that we put out here on this report. But it's hard to turn those big cash markets around. You can't turn them on a dime. You need more like 40 acres to turn it around. Of course, your guys in Chicago, they just go up and down. The limit moves, and it doesn't bother them a bit. But look at your fat cattle trade. We haven't had any trade to speak of at all, really, so far this week. But now, instead of wondering how much lower it's going to be, we're thinking we're going to keep it steady, and not that 119 steady I was talking about last time either. I think the 120 steady is more realistic on what we're going to get. And I lied to you earlier in the week saying that wasn't worth mentioning what the Fed Cattle Exchange had. Of course, they only had 304 head of cattle, but they sold one pen, a little over 100 head on there, at $119.75, and that's from a major packer. So that is worth talking about, and they PO'd another pen at $119.50. But let's look at a place where they actually sold some cattle in some big drafts. Sioux Falls Regional Stockyard in Worthing, South Dakota, up there at a fat cattle auction. I like auctions, always have liked auctions. Here on your feeder flash, we support the auction way of selling cattle, both fat cattle, feeder cattle, baby calves, horses, pigs, goats, valuables, memorabilia, anything. That's the best way to sell it, is at an auction. And they had 674 head. Of those were all slaughter cattle. Of those, 500 of them were fat. So 500 fat cattle run in front of buyers, and they bid on them until they didn't want them anymore. And the slaughter steers, and this was on Wednesday, slaughter steers were $2 to $3 higher, slaughter heifers $1 to $2 higher. Your choice steers and heifers sold from $119 to $122 and a quarter. A couple deals, both steers and heifers that come from a natural program, $124 to $125, and that's normal for up there. They do get a handful of cattle there that would fit a natural program. But box beef cutout values were still a little bit weak, but did not lose much more ground on Wednesday, with choice cutouts at $205.30, down 28 cents. Selects were also down 28 cents at $199.61. But let's talk about this feeder market. Your real-time index on Beef Market Central, based on an 800-pound steer, rose $1.86 on Wednesday's trade from the end of Tuesday's trading, and now sitting at $145.82, and will be growing here as we work on through the rest of the week. But remember, on last Wednesday, El Reno livestock market, OKC West there in El Reno, Oklahoma, they suffered the brunt of it. They were just sitting in the perfect spot to have the brunt of the weakness there, right in the middle of wheat country that completely dried out, bitter cold temperatures, and then feedlots to the south and to the west and to the north, all completely packed full, and a market that really relies on corporate type buyers. Well, they suffered the brunt of it. But look at this market this Wednesday. Feeder steers $8 to $10 higher, feeder heifers $4 to $8 higher. And if you look at the automated market report on Cattle Market Central there, that it showed exactly the same thing. Your weighted averages were way up in the $7 higher, which you could call 8, and as much as $10 or more higher, and pretty much across the board on your calves and all the way up into your heavy feeders. But that's great that it got a big turnaround like that. It was also a turnaround if you go up into the northern plains and into the Midwest. Creston, Iowa had a really good sale on Wednesday, and I was getting messages from that sale. One of my buyer friends says, I was at a sale just yesterday, which would have been Tuesday, and had the exact same buyer sitting there, and he said a 7-weight steer will bring at least $8 to $10 more today than it would yesterday, which would have been Creston, Iowa, would have been the sale he was at. With feeder steers there, quoted $8 to $12 higher. Had a load of steers in Creston, weighed 715 pounds at $165.50, and think about what they would have brought, $165.50, and those cattle would have been hard pressed to get into the upper 50s here just a day ago, or for sure a week ago. But look at some other individual quotes. Torrington livestock markets, now they get the big strings there. Torrington is a big market there in southeast Wyoming, and they really have a great sale and get some, you know, and they have a video market there too, cattle country video. But a lot of those guys, even the guys with the big strings, sometimes just want to bring them in, run them through the ring, and let guys bid on them. And Carter Livestock is one of them. They had a big string of steers in there Wednesday at 5 o'clock in the evening, and they sold one draft, and it's the biggest draft, of course, this year so far, by far. Could be the biggest draft of the year that we'll see. But there's some other ones different times of the year later on that we'll talk about. But 459 head of weaned steer calves, weighed 645 pounds at $176 and a quarter. Earlier in the day, they had a load of 517 pound steers, bring $204.50. Pretty significant prices. Look at another individual quote. Bassett, Nebraska had 125 head of 619 pound steers, bring $181. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.